Right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to part 2 on comedy. Theory behind us now. I can speak of theory again if it's necessary or useful, but essentially right now we'll be talking about some experience, some actual events. One that was very informative for me. I was doing a comedy show on Sunday evenings at the Grand Old Elks Lodge, I think is what it was called, or Grand Benevolent Order of Elks, Lodge 49 or 46 or something, New Haven. You'll recognize New Haven as the home of Yale University. Now I was doing this show, and the way it started was the guy who ran the show invited a bunch of comedians to come and do their thing, and then he was going to choose the best one to lead his weekly show. And I ended up getting that honor. And so this went on for a while. I was paid $20 once, and then my beers were bought for me a bit. But generally you don't make a lot of money in comedy. It's an honor just to be able to stand up there and be part of the show. And this went on for a while, and I liked the crowd. They were great. They were mostly veterans, and they were mostly like 50 or 60, and they mostly sat around drinking, and most of them were black. So why that was the case, I have no idea. I just came to the gig because I was invited, I won my place, and I kept going back until it was over. And near there, I went to a little coffee shop one day, probably early on a Sunday, it might have been on a Wednesday. I thought it was a Wednesday in my memory. So I just found out about this show that was happening there and went there. And I did the same material that I was using, that had won me the spot and was getting me laughs, and it was working. Did the same material and got nothing from the crowd. And one joke, and I can't remember what it was, but as I was going through the material, there was a joke which I did one way that made me look smart. And I had twisted it, and I did it another way that made me look the fool. And I had been using that joke as making me look the fool. And with this audience, I went back to my original version where I looked smart. And that was the only hint of any chuckle I got the whole time. And it wasn't much. And at one point I even broke down a little. I said, boy, you guys are a shitty audience. Which you're not supposed to do. You can never get them back. And I've never gone back to that coffee shop. But that was a rough stand-up. And it shows you that there's a big difference in audiences. Now in that case it might be down to race, it might be down to class, and it might be down to some mixture of the two. But it was some sort of working class black audience that loved my material, and the upper middle class Yale shishis who couldn't even crack a smile at anything I was saying. And I don't know why, maybe they were analyzing it as low puns, or maybe it was politically charged for them. I don't know. Now, let me just draw a line there, and let's move on to how I deliver the material, what material I deliver. And I want to mention Christopher Hitchens at this point, because in his Q&As he was often found doing a limerick or two for the audience. And they always wanted more, and I loved the limericks, and I have tried to devote many of them to memory. And you can find, there's a video on my channel of many of the limericks that I know. So, I want to mention right now, just because we've been talking about Yale, that on the chest of a barmaid at Yale were printed the prices of ale. And on her behind, for the sake of the blind, was the same information in Braille. And you can read the menu 2 or 3 times if you need to. See, that's a fun one. It's a limerick. Limericks are usually anatomical. They're usually at somebody's expense. And they're usually fun. Here's one thing I've found about limericks. Most audiences don't have a big appetite for them. And the best way to do them is to do 2 limericks, possibly 3 at the most, if you can find a way to tie them together, and then go back to doing a few jokes. and then set your way up in your joke for another limerick, and maybe 2, 3 at the most. Now, when you've got 25 or 30 limericks, then you've got to choose which ones to use, especially if you've only got 5 minutes. You get to choose 2 or 3 limericks and 5 jokes. So it's when you've got a big 15 or 20 minute set to fill, that's when you can sit and do some limericks. Let's see, what else can I say about my experience with comedy? I like the black working class audiences better than the upper class whites. You have to make fun of yourself. I'm running out of steam. I'm sure I've forgotten something. I should have done more notes. Maybe I've said everything I need to say. I'm going to finish off by giving you a few jokes then. So this is how I start out an act. Let me just give you this. We'll do this as an exercise in analyzing some of the jokes here. So I start out my act by saying, "Hi ladies and gentlemen, you probably haven't seen me before. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I was born on a farm in Utah. I was very young when I was born. I grew up at the end of a one-way street, and I don't know how I got out of Utah, but here I am," or something like that. So these two things here, I was very young when I was born. You know, there are a lot of people that start their stories way too early. They say, "Oh, let's see, well, when I was 6," and it's like, no, skip way further ahead than that. And there's this type of person who says, "Well, when I was born, I was very young." You know, and it's like, of course you were, duh. And so I like that line. And it makes you look like an idiot to use that line. I grew up at the end of a one-way street. What's at the end of a one-way street? How could you get back out? So that's stupid, right? Out there in the, I'll tell you what goes on out there in the farming country in Utah. One morning, my brother got his arm caught in the baler, and it got torn off right above the elbow. We had to take him to the hospital. Call the ambulance. The ambulance comes, gets him. We're following the ambulance, and a couple of tractors are pulling a barn across the road, and the ambulance had to stop and wait. And do you know how it waited? Patiently. But then we get to the hospital. The doctor is looking at him. He's got the arm there and everything. He says, "How old is he?" We say he's 14. The doctor says, "Well, it's a minor wound." Now, pardon me, you'll see that these jokes are stupid, they're incompetent, but most of all, they're safe. These jokes are not politically charged. I'm not making fun of blacks or whites or anybody in between or Democrats or Republicans. They're safe. And that is a tragedy of a lot of my material. I'll skip down I see down here a couple, and now let me skip to them, just to give you a couple more examples of jokes that I have come up with that are safe for virtually all audiences. And I realize I'm under I'm being constrained by this. Amelia Earhart, The Mystery of Amelia Earhart. There's no mystery. Flew a plane over the ocean, nobody had flown. Now I set that up in different ways, but that's the basic joke. There's no mystery there. Here's another one. Armour hot dogs. Wrong line of business, I think. Right? It's just stupid. And it's funny to some people. Some people laugh. Some of my jokes are so deadpan. I did have a girl in the audience once say, "Wait, are these jokes?" So that's fun when everyone's silent and listening to you, and they're processing it, and nobody's laughing, but they keep listening and everyone's silent. That's fun. You know about the phenomenon where you can turn your iPhone on and it talks to your car radio? It's called syncing your car radio. I did that for my father-in-law, and then a few weeks later he brought his boat down to the lake, and I said, and he got so mad. I said, "I'll sink your boat." No. I said, "Come on, let me sink your boat." These are the type of jokes that you end up with if you can't be offensive. So I think comedy's under a strain today. The best comedians, the big ones who are able to make a huge space for themselves, do edgy stuff. Like Ricky Gervais is an atheist. C.K. Lewis is excellent. The ones that are garbage and crap are like that blonde, chubby liberal girl who just talks about giving blowjobs to guys and stuff like that. Not funny. Like Christopher Hitchens said, women aren't funny anyway, but even the ones that are funny are Dyke or Butch or Chew, and she misses on all those counts, and the only ticket sales she gets are from cult followers of the far left. So comedy is what it is. It's under a straitjacket today. I do wonder sometimes what kind of comedy I would write if I were writing comedy for an objectivist audience. A comedian said, I can't remember what comedian it was, I just watching this recently. He said, comedy comes alive. Oh, it was Joe Rogan. He said, comedy comes alive when you do it in front of an audience. You can sit there and write stuff and take notes and rewrite and edit and rehearse, but you can't actually get anywhere at the end of the day until you get in front of an audience and deliver the comedy and see their reactions and rework it that way. Now, if he's right, if that's true, then the final product is a result of the values that the audience holds. And if that's true, then the left poisons comedy.